Yeah, they're recording. Do-de-do-do-do-de. Como, thank you. Good, thank you. Good. No, not this one. We don't want this one.
Gods and Goddesses of the Greek and Roman Pantheon, British Museum. Gods and goddesses of the Greek and Roman pantheon derived from the Greek words pi alpha nu pan all and star epsilon omicron sigma theos god. Pantheon literally means of all gods. Although any polytheistic religion with multiple deities can have a pantheon, and they existed in North Aztec and Sumerian cultures, to name a few. We're taking a look at the classical pantheon and the 12 major deities included in it. You may also know this group as the 12 Olympians. According to Greek mythology, the world began when Gaia, the earth, emerged from chaos and empty nothingness. She then gave birth to Uranoth, the sky, and other primordial deities like Pontos, the sea, and Aria, the mountains. Together, Gaia and Uranoth had 12 children known as the Titans, including Cronoth and Rhea, Zeus' parents. The Titans rebelled against their father Uranoth, overthrew him, and Cronoth became the ruler of the gods until Zeus deposed him to rule over the Olympic gods minus. More on that shortly. There is evidence for Greek religious practice involving 12 gods from the late 6th century BC. In the Homeric hymn to Hermes, from around 500 BC, Hermes stands at Olympia on the bank of the river Alcaeus and divides a sacrifice into 12 portions for the gods. According to Thucydid's history of the Peloponnesian War, the ruler Pisistratus established an altar of the 12 gods in Athens around 522 BC. But how can you tell us from Apollo? Do you know the difference between Athena, Artemis, and Aphrodite? 1. Zeus or Jupiter. 1. Zeus or Jupiter. King of the gods is Zeus or his Roman equivalent, Jupiter, who rules over Mount Olympus and is the god of thunder and lightning as well as law and order. You can recognize Zeus by his symbols, the thunderbolt, the eagle, and the oak tree, and as a sky god he is often shown among clouds or sitting on top of Mount Olympus. Zeus' parents were the Titans, Cronoth and Rhea, and he is the youngest brother of Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, who are also gods in the pantheon. According to Greek mythology, Zeus' father Cronoth learned that one of his children was fated to dethrone him as leader of the gods, so ate each one as soon as they were born. When Zeus was born, his mother Rhea hid him in a cave on the island of Crete, and instead set Cronoth a stone wrapped in swaddling clothes. When Zeus grew up, he forced Cronoth to throw up his brothers and sisters, waged war on his father, and won. 2. Hera or Juno. 2. Hera or Juno. Hera or Juno in Roman religion is the wife and sister of Zeus, and is queen of the gods. Her symbols are the peacock, the cuckoo, and the cow animals she considered sacred, and her chariot is pulled by peacocks instead of horses. In this gold hat jewel, made in the 16th century, she is shown at the judgment of Paris red. More on that in our Myths of the Trojan War and Women and Goddess of the Trojan War blogs, accompanied by a blue peacock. She is the goddess of marriage, childbirth, and fertility. Although she is often depicted as reserved and calm, she repeatedly fought revenge for Zeus' many affairs with mortal and immortal women, punishing them and their offspring. 3. Poseidon or Neptune. 3. Poseidon or Neptune. God of the sea, horses, and earthquakes, Poseidon or Neptune is often shown, driving a chariot of horses or sea creatures and wielding the trident he used to control the waves. Poseidon's symbols include his trident, a three-pronged spear, as well as the horses and dolphins that pull his chariot. On this hue, Poseidon or Neptune is shown at the stem, riding a sea monster and holding his trident. As his brothers Zeus and Hades ruled the skies and the underworld, Poseidon was given control of the sea and protected sailors and seafarers. His many children include both the winged horse Pegasus, whom he fathered with the Gorgon Medusa, and the Cyclops Polyphemus, who was blinded by Odysseus and his crew in Homer's Odyssey, which you can read more about in our Woe Was Homer blog. 4. Ars or Mars. 4. Ars or Mars. This Romano-British statuette shows Mars, the god of war, fully decked out in his characteristic armor, missing the original spear and shield he would once have held. You can recognize Mars or Ras by his armor and weapons, usually a spear and a fieldern. The god is sometimes accompanied by a boar or a vulture. The son of Zeus and Hera. Mars' Greek counterpart was the god of bloodlust and violent warfare. His half-sister Athena represented the more noble aspects of civil conduct during war. Although he was unpopular with the other gods of the classical pantheon, with the exception of his lover Aphrodite, Mars was particularly admired in Sparta as the ideal soldier. By contrast, his Roman equivalent Mars was far more popular, seen as second only to Jupiter, and was considered to be the protector of Rome. 5. Athena or Minerva. 5. Athena or Minerva. Mars' half-sister is the Greek goddess Athena, goddess of reason, handicraft, wisdom and war. She is the daughter of Zeus and, according to legend, sprang fully grown from his forehead, dressed in armor. She also gives her name to the city of Athens. Athena and Minerva, her Roman equivalent, is often shown wearing a helmet to demonstrate her prowess in war. And her symbols include the owl and the olive tree. In the founding myths of Athens, Athena beat Poseidon in a competition over patronage of the city by growing the first olive tree, hence its association with her. By contrast, Poseidon gave Athens a spring of salted water, which was far less useful to the city. This tetradrachm coin from 5th century BC Athens shows Athena wearing a crested helmet decorated with olive leaves, and an owl with an olive spray features on the reverse side. 6. Demeter or Ceres. 6. Demeter or Pheres. Demeter and her Roman counterpart Pheres was the goddess of agriculture and the harvest, and is often depicted with crops, such as barley and wheat, or a cornucopia of produce. Demeter also presided over the fertility of the earth and the natural cycle of life and death. She was the mother of Persephone, who was abducted by Hades and forced to live in the underworld for 6 months of the year. According to Greek mythology, when her daughter was abducted, Demeter searched for her continuously, preoccupied with grease, and as a result, her attention was diverted from the harvest and plants began to die. When Persephone returned, Demeter cared for the earth again and things began to grow, and this cycle was said to create the seasons. This 2nd century statue shows Demeter bearing a torch, which is associated with her endless search for her daughter. You can visit this object on display in the Enlightenment Gallery. 7. Apollo. 7. Apollo. Apollo is the only god in the classical pantheon to share the same name in both Greek and Roman traditions. The twin brother of Artemis or Diana, Apollo has many associations, including the sun, music, archery, prophecy and healing. His symbols include, naturally enough, the sun, a bow, an arrow, a lyre, and a swan. He is found on this 4th century BC Paston Bell crater, or large wine-mixing bowl, with a white sun shining brightly above his head. Apollo and Artemis were the children of Zeus and Leto. On hearing of Leto's pregnancy, Hera, Zeus' wife, banned Leto from giving birth on land. Leto found the island of Delos in the Cyclades archipelago of Greece, which was a floating island and wasn't anchored to the mainland, and gave birth to Apollo and Artemis Faisally there. When the twins were born, swans are said to have circled the island 7 times, hence their association with Apollo, and the island later became sacred to him. Zeus also gave his son a golden chariot pulled by swans as a gift. 8. Artemis or Diana. 8. Artemis or Diana, Apollo's twin sister. Artemis or Diana was the goddess of the hunt, wild animals, chastity and childbirth. She is often shown with a stag or hunting dog, and you can recognize her as the only goddess who wears a shorter dress, with the hem listed and tied with a belt so she could run with ease. One of her most famous myths is the story of the hunter Ictaeon. According to Ovid's Metamorphoses, Ictaeon stumbled into Diana's grove as she bathed, catching a glimpse of the goddess naked. In retribution, she splashed him with water, cursing him and transforming him into a deer, and he was subsequently killed by his own hunting dogs. This bronze figure of Artemis from Ephesus on the west coast of modern-day Turkey dates to the 2nd or 1st centuries BC and shows the goddess with her skirt raised up, ready to run. There was a major temple of Artemis at Ephesus, which was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. 9. Aphrodite or Venus. 9. Aphrodite or Venus, goddess of love, sex, and beauty. Aphrodite or Venus is said to have emerged from the white foam generated when the Titan Kronos threw the severed testicles of his father, Uranus, into the sea. Aphrodite's symbols include doves, roses and myrtles. This marble relief shows the goddess with a dove next to her right foot. holding a palm branch symbolic of victory in her left hand. Although Aphrodite was married to Hephaestus, the master blacksmith, she had multiple affairs including with the god Ars. She is almost always accompanied by Eros, the god of love or lust, or Cupid in the Roman tradition. Her name gives us the word aphrodisiac, while the word venereal is derived from Venus. 10. Hephaestus or Vulcan. 10. Hephaestus or Vulcan. Aphrodite's husband was Hephaestus or Vulcan, the god of fire, a master blacksmith and craftsman to the gods. Hephaestus made weapons and tools for the gods and select mortals like Hermes' helmet and winged sandals, Achilles' armor, and Aeneas' field. His symbols include the anvil, hammer and tongs, and this earthenware forfeit shows him forging an arrow. Accompanied by his wife and 3 putty winged incense, Hephaestus became the patron of craftsmen, and volcanic fires were often considered to be his workshops. Vulcan gives his name to volcano and, less excitingly, vulcanized rubber. 11. Hermes or Mercury. 11. Hermes or Mercury, the messenger of the gods, was Hermes, known as Mercury in ancient Roman religion, and he was also an astral god, protecting livestock and travelers. Hermes' symbols include the caduceus, a staff intertwined with 2 snakes, as well as his winged sandals and cap, and a tortoise. Hermes was the second youngest of the Olympian gods, older only than Dionysius, and was the son of Zeus and the nymphs Maya. He could travel quickly between divine and mortal worlds with his winged sandals and was responsible for transporting souls to the underworld. He was also the patron god of merchants and thieves. The Farnese Hermes shows the god wearing his winged sandals, holding the caduceus in his left hand, and wearing a chlamys, a small Greek cloak which was often the sole item of clothing for young soldiers and messengers, hence its association with Hermes. 12. Dionysos or Bacchus. 12. Dionysos or Bacchus. Finally, we come to Dionysos, the youngest of the Olympian gods and son of Zeus and the mortal woman, Semele. In some versions, Hestia, one of the children of Cronos and Rhea, is counted as the 12th Olympian, instead of Dionysos. Dionysos was the god of wine, vines, fertility, and festivity. He is most often shown with grapes and vines, as well as big cats like pandas, leopards and tigers. For Romans he was known as Bacchus, and the Bacchanalia or Dionysia were raucous festivals celebrating the god. This Pompeian wall painting shows the god accompanied by a panther, holding a wine cup with vines and grapes in his hair. Read more sensational stories of gods and goddesses, mortals and monsters in the book Greek Mythology opens in new window. You can find replicas of some of these objects, and other products inspired by the Greek and Roman gods, in our online shop opens in new window. If ancient Rome is your thing, you can still view highlights from our special exhibition Ero, the man behind the myth, which ran from 27th May 2021 to 24th October 2021. The show took a closer look at the infamous emperor and let you decide whether he was a young, inexperienced ruler trying his best in a divided society, or the merciless, matriceable megalomaniac history has painted him to be.
Going out, I think. Going out now. Oopala, oopala. It was that about the gold. Talk about that.
Luxury and power, Purser to Greece British Museum. Our limited period early bird ticket prices are detailed below. No booking code is required. Monday to Friday, adults £12, adults plus £2, donation £14. Seniors 60 plus £12, £6 after 12.00 on Family visits British Museum. Facilities for families if you're visiting. Maori mythology Wikieland. Maori mythology and Maori tradition fair to major categories into which the remote, oral history of New Zealand.
Is that New Zealand? New Zealand? New Zealand? Yep.
Zealand's Moro may be divided. Maori myths confirm fantastic tales relating to the origins of what was the observable world for the pre-European Maori, often involving gods and demigods. Maori tradition conscience more soul plurical gen Foston involving historical or semi-historical forebears. Both categories merge in Wakapapato explain the overall origin of the Maori and their connections to the world which they lived in. Tales relating to the origins of the Maori world. Maori had yet to invent a writing system before European contact. Beginning in 1769 so they had no method to permanently record their histories, traditions, or mythologies. They relied on oral retellings memorized from generation to generation. The three forms of expression prominent in Maori and Polynesian oral literature: genealogical recital, poetry, and narrative prose. To experts in these subjects were broadly known as tohunga. Rituals, beliefs, and general worldview of Maori society were ultimately based on an elaborate mythology that had been inherited from a Polynesian homeland. The Waiki, and adapted and developed in the new setting free alongside different Polynesian cultures having different versions of a given tradition. Often the same story for a character, event, or object will have many different variations for every ui hapu or individual who retells it, meaning there is never a fixed or correct version of any particular story. Forces oral forms genealogical recital. The reciting of genealogies Wakapapa was particularly well developed in Maori oral literature, where it served several functions in the recounting of tradition. Firstly, it served to provide a kind of time scale which unified all Maori mythology, tradition, and history, from the distant past to the present. It linked living people to the gods and the legendary heroes. By quoting appropriate genealogical lines, a narrator emphasized his or her connection with the characters whose deeds were being described. And that connection also proved that the narrator had the right to speak of them. To prose narrative. Prose narrative forms the great bulk of Maori legendary material. Some appear to have been sacred or esoteric, but many of the legends were well-known stories told as entertainment in the long nights of winter. Nevertheless, they should not be regarded simply as fairy tales to be enjoyed only as stories. The Maori myth, for example, was important not only as entertainment but also because it embodied the beliefs of the people concerning such things as the origin of fire, of death, and of the land in which they lived. The ritual chants concerning fire-making, sishing, deaths, and so on made reference to Mao and derived their power from such reference. Bruce Grandison Biggs Maori Myths and Traditions 1960 Fixed to Poetry and Song. Maori poetry was always sung or chanted. Musical rhythms rather than linguistic devices served to distinguish it from prose. Rhyme were not devices used by the Maori. Only when a given text is sung or chanted will the meter become apparent. The lines are indicated by features of the music. The language of poetry tends to differ stylistically from prose. Typical features of poetic diction are the use of synonym for contrastive opposites, and the repetition of key words for three archaic words are common, including many which have lost any specific meaning and acquired a religious mystique. Abbreviated, sometimes cryptic utterances and the use of certain grammatical constructions not found in prose are also common. Bruce Grandison Biggs Maori Myths and Traditions 1966 to 19th century writings missionaries. Few records survive of the extensive body of Maori mythology and tradition from the early years of European contact. See missionaries had the best opportunity to get the information, but failed to do so at first, in part because their knowledge of the language was imperfect. Most of the missionaries who did master the language were unsympathetic to Maori beliefs for regarding them as puerile beliefs, or even works of the devil. For exceptions to this general rule were Johann Wellesoff's South Island Lower Alpha 1 Richard Taylor, who worked in Storanaki and Wanganui River areas, and William Colenso, who lived at Sea Bay of Island and also in Hawke's Bay. Their writings are valuable as some of the best sources for the legends of the areas where they worked for non-missionary collectors. In the 1840s, Sedgwick Shortland, Sir George Grey, and other non-missionaries began to collect the myths and traditions. At that time many Maori were literate in their own language, and the material collected was, in general, written by Maori themselves in the same style as they spoke. The new medium seems to have had minimal effect on the style and content of the stories. Genealogies, thongs, and narratives were written out in full, just as if they were being recited or thong. Many of these early manuscripts have been published, and as of 2012 update scholars have access to a great body of material, more than for any other area of Pacific, containing multiple versions of the great myth cycles known in the rest of Polynesia, as well as of the local traditions pertaining only to New Zealand. A great deal of the best material is found in two books, Engamahia Ngatapana, The Deeds of the Ancestors, collected by Sir George Grey and translated as Polynesian Mythology 5, and Ancient History of the Maori 6 volumes. Edited by John White for Lower Alpha, to the earliest full account of the genealogies Osachan the first humans was recorded from Gati Ranguos Wimai. Te Ranjika Kaingatama Arungi the Sons of Heaven in 1849 6 Lower Alpha 3 Myth. Myths are set in the remote past, and their content often have to do with the supernatural. They present Maori ideas about segregation of the universe and the origins of gods, atua, and people. The mythology accounts for natural phenomena, the weather, the stars and the moon, the fish of the sea, the birds of the forest, and the forests themselves. Much of the culturally institution behavior of the people finds its functions in myth, such as opening ceremonies performed at dawn to reflect the coming of light into the world. 7. The Maori understanding of the development of the universe was expressed in genealogical form. These genealogies appear in many versions, in which several symbolic scenes constantly recur through the cosmogonic genealogies, are usually brought to a close by the two name Frangi and Papa Sky, Father Randir's mother. The marriage of this celestial pair produced the gods, and, in due course, all the living things of the earth. 3. The main corpus of Maori mythology are represented as unfolding in three-story complexes or cycles, which include the world's origin, the stories of the demigod Moi, and Stawakinis 3 creation, dawn of the universe. In one generalized telling of the universe's creation, in the beginning, there was Te Kora the nothing void, which became Te Komatua the parentless void. In its search for procreation, 8 from it came, Te Po the night, becoming Te Pora the long night, and then becoming Te Ponui the great night. Gradiolita the light glimmered into existence, stretching to all corners of the universe to become Te Aochiro the long-standing light. 9 next came Te 8 of the dawn, from which came Te Maku the moisture, and Mahorinuatia cloud of the dawn. Te Maku and Mahorinuatia wed to form Rangi 10:56. In other versions, the evolution of the universe is likened to a tree, with its base, taproots, branching roots, and root hairs. Another scene likens evolution to the development of a child in the womb, as in the sequence: the seeking, the searching, the conception, the growth, the feeling, the thought, the mind, the desire, the knowledge, the form, the quickening. 11 Some, or all, of these scenes may appear in the same genealogy. Bruce Grandison, Biggs Maori Myths and Traditions 1966. Free Earth creation generally, Rani's wife is Papa, though they are known throughout Polynesia, even when they are not considered spouses. 12 890 To the pair laid in a tight embrace which blocked light from touching the world, and from them came the children Ormia Rongo Tweri Tangaroa and Tane. Some traditions may list some of these children alongside Arua Rudangangana, Itua Tiki Wiro, Arumako, among others. Often, a war or skirmish between the siblings ends with them becoming the ancestors of certain concepts, habitats, mannerisms, animals, tools, or plants that they each represent. For instance, Tane became Tane Mahuta, the father of birds and the forest. 9 And to become Matunga, the father of humanity and its activities, such as war. Sometimes, Tane Mahuta ascends to the sky after Nginuto dress him with stars, who mourns for his wife every time it rains. Similarly, Papachuanyuka strains in an effort to reach the sky, causing earthquakes, and the mist comes from her sighing. In a version involving Warutangangana, Wiro, Tweri, Tangaroa, Tuamatua, Tamatakaka, Tu, Paya, and Tane, Tweri finally agreed to the separation, while Wiro was against it. Tane instructed Tamatakaka and to set axes with which to cut Raini's arms off, and the blood that dripped from him down onto Papachuanuku is said to be where the red sunset now comes from. As well as the origin of the colors red and blue in painting, red oxide and blue sulfate of iron phytation needed. This is very different to the telling in which Tane discards Tuz suggestions to thwart the parents to ensure their separation. Where Tweri is the brother most upset by the idea to separate the parents at all. In South Island traditions Reikinuwa waits at least 3 wives including Papachueniku. Poeru Po is one of Reikinua's wives and the Ariel Reiki's parents 8 in these versions. The gods that are usually considered Reikinua's children may become each other's half-siblings, some even becoming Reikinua's grandfathers. South Island's creation Iraqi and his brother Reikura and Reikura travelled across the waters of the ocean to visit Reikinua's new wife Minos, Papachueniku. On the return journey, their canoe Waka became capsized on a reef, so they climbed atop its hull to escape drowning. They froze into stone, becoming the tallest peaks of Southern Alps. Afterwards they were discovered by Tutareko and who enlisted Kura's help in shaping and clothing the land 13 Hensik Waka O Oreka became the South Island 8 in a slight variant. Iraqi and his grandfather Kirikirike Tata landed at Shag Point aboard Zire Taru, where they turned into the ever-associated mountain and range. Kirikirike Tata persuaded Roraki to come fit with them there, while her husband Morganatua became a peak on Sebano or Range 14 origin of humans. There are many mythologies that describe the creation of humankind. Though Tumateunga is the major god associated with humanity and its activities. Humanity's creation is sometimes credited to Tane Mahuta 15 lower alpha for and often involves Tiki. In one story, Tane Mahuta abandoned his Weferanga war for only giving birth to a stone. One such legend of humanity's origins is which Tane Mahuta created, the first woman, Anihion. From Foyle and with her became the father of Inatitama, 16 Tane Mahuta concealed Hitatama's parentage to her, and together they had children. Upon the realization that he is her father, she flees to Foindawald and renames herself to Anenyo Tapo, becoming the goddess Atua of night, death. And the underworld 15 where she receives the souls of their defendants. A similar story tells how Tiki found the first woman in a pool. Imagined through his reflection and burst into reality by covering the pool with dirt. She later became excited by the sight of Anil, passing on the excitement to Tiki and resulting in the first reproductive act 17. Other versions say either Tane Mahuta or Tumateunga created Tiki as the first man. In Gati traditions Marakorakoi said to be the original woman created by Arohurahu with Paro's help. After seducing Tiki, she gave birth to Nkwataata. Maui's exploits the Thun is flowed in the days of old to Manuatara. The Thun used to move through the sky at much too faster pace for humanity to complete all their day's chores, leaving long, cold nights that lasted for many hours while Tamanuatara slept. Maui and his brothers journeyed to Tamanuatara's sleeping pit with a large rope, which in some tellings was made from their Fifthahana's hair. The brothers fashioned the rope into a noose or net, and in doing so discovered the mode of plaiting flax into stout square-shaped ropes. Tuamaka, and the manner of plaiting flat ropes, a harahara, and of spinning round ropes, which when Tamanuatara awoke found himself caught in. Using apache made from the jawbone of their grandmother, Nyarangawenua, Mao beat the Thun into agreeing to flow down, and give the world more time during the Day 18 North and South Islands in southwestland Kati Mahaki Ki, Makuisti Turaka Wakara Mao Mare 19 is named in honor of the tradition stating that Mao landed his canoe in Bruce Bay when he arrived in New Zealand 20 in a tale collected from Akai Tahuangan off Lake Ellesmere Flash G. Waihora. Maui threw Agento the ocean, and then buried him beneath a mountain of Banks, Peninsula 13. The next winter, the giant remained still underneath the mountain, but stirred during summer, which caused the land to split, and form Akeroa Harbour. Maui would continue to pile earth on top of the giant, and the giant would continue to stir every summer, creating a lake and Pigeon Bay in the process, until finally the giant could not move anymore. 13. Maui's brothers constantly fund him, and so never allowed him to join their fishing trips. 21. One day, he managed to sneak out to the waters with them by hiding in their canoe. Once they were far out to sea, he revealed himself and used Mirarangawenua's jawbone, now fashioned into a fishing hook, to catch fish. 18. Since his brothers would not allow him to use their bait, he pierced his nose with the hook and used his blood instead. Soon, Mao caught hold of a giant fish said to be a gift from Mirarangawenua, which he successfully hauled up to the surface of the ocean. The canoe getting caught atop Mount Hikarantu, which according to Tongati Poro is still there. 22. 5. Mao went to examine his catch and have it blessed by priests from Hawaii, trusting his brothers to look after it. Out of jealousy, though, the brothers took to beating the fish and cutting it open, carving out the mountains and valleys of what would become Itika Maui. The North Island Tiwakara Maui, the South Island, likewise was the name of Maui's canoe. Stewart Island Wash Pungara Maui, Maui's anchor stone. And Cape Kidnappers becoming Martara Maui, Maui's fish hook 12. 280 for fire is brought to humanity. One night, Maui put out all the sires in his village out of a curiosity to learn where it actually comes from. His mother Tauranga, the village of Rangatira, sent Maui to his grandma Firma Huka, featureless fire, to retrieve more. She gave him a fingernail, but he extinguished it, so she kept giving him fingernails until she became furious with him, setting fire to the land and she to attack Maui. He transformed into a Kahato escape, but the fire singed the underside of his wings, turning them red. He talked to his ancestor Storimati and Waitari Matakatakato send rain to extinguish the fire. Mahuka threw her last nail at Maui, which missed and set fire to Sekakomako Totrapapukati, and mo trees, the dried sticks of the Mahoe brought back by Maui to show his people how to make fire for themselves. 23 Hina and Tinarau. Maui turned Hina's husband Irawaru into the first dog curry after a dispute they had during a fishing trip. 12-107. Once they reached the full, Maui crushed Irawaru underneath the canoe, breaking his back and stretching out his limbs, turning him into a dog. Upon learning of this, Hina threw herself to the ocean. Instead of drowning, she was carried across the waves to Motatapu, where she became the wife of Chieftain Nirau, son of Kangaroa. She took on the name Honorito reflect her mood since Maui changed Irawaru. With Tinarau, Hina became the mother of Teheraharu. Fatanga Kai performed the baptism ritual for the child, and so Tinarau allowed Kai to ride his pet whale, possibly a Tanawa, Tutunui, in order to return home. This proved to be a mistake on Tinarau's part, as despite his strict instructions to the contrary, Kai rode Tutunui into shallow water where he became stranded and died. Kai and his people then used the whale's flesh for food. Hinarau and a party of women put Kai to sleep with a magical lullaby and brought him back to Motatapa. After he woke, he was taunted and killed. This broke out into a war, a notable event of which Wakata assisted Tinarau in burning his enemies. In a South Island variant of that miss, Tinarau and Tutunui met Kai, who was in a canoe. Kai borrowed Tutunui and Tinarau borrowed an Nautilus from his friend Tortini in a continued search for Haitawawa. When Tinarau smells the wind, he realizes Tutunui is being roasted. In a very different variant, Hina was Maui's wife. Over a period of time where Hina visited a bathing pool, T. Tunaroa, the father of eels, molested Hina. As revenge, Mau cut T. Tunarau's body into bits, throwing them into different habitats where they became different kinds of fish: conger eels, freshwater eels, lampreys, and dogfish. Sailor to conquer death. One day Maui followed his mother to the underworld in search of his father Makichitara, who mistakenly performed the baptismal rituals for Maui's birth improperly, making it certain that he would die. So Maui decided to overcome death by facing his ancestress Hainanua Tapo. Makichitara instructs that she can be seen as the red flashes of sunset. His companions vary from version to version, usually being either his brothers or a group of small birds. To defeat Hainanua Tapo, Maui had to crawl through her vagina in the form of a worm and climb out through her mouth. Unfortunately, one of his brothers, or one of the birds named Pau Kawaka, bursts out into laughter at the sight of Maui beginning the task, which wakes Hainanua Tapo, who crushes him with Hyubzadine and Hanamuntis between her sides. In one rare tradition, Maui swapped faces with his wife Aroha against her will, out of jealousy that she was much prettier while he was ugly. She left to the underworld in anger, becoming featureless night and death. The spirits of those who pass through her realm of Durangotarame get beaten by her. Maui and Roa's child was Ranaho, featureless rocks and stones. Twaki complex cannibalism and the effects of tapu. Waitari, a cannibalist Akatuos Thunder and a granddaughter of Maui, married the mortal Katangatari people, believing, as his name suggested, that he too was a cannibal. After she killed her favorite slave for him, she was disappointed to learn that he is instead a kind man, who was horrified at the flesh offering. His diet consisted of fish instead, but Waitari grew tired of eating fish, and so killed Kaitangata's relatives. When he returned from a fishing trip, she asked him to perform the chants that are used to offer flesh to the gods, but he did not know any such chants. After eating, she turned his relatives' bones into barbed fish hooks for Kaitangata to use, with which he caught a few hapuku. She ate the fish, which had become infused with the pew from the hooks, and as a result she was gradually blinded. Later she was insulted by her husband when he remarked at her strange nature, so she revealed that she is thunder from the sky and returned there. Life of Twaki Waiteri Swama had been killed by Supernatury. His sons Twaki and Turi made an ascent into the sky, where they sound Waiteri, who had since become fully blinded. Her only food consisted of Oskumaran Taro. She reveals to her grandsons how to climb further into the heavens, but in some versions, Carrie falls to his death. While they were in the sky, Twaki met his wife, Ava Tengatangwani Kurapiri. In the version with Tingatango, the couple quarrel and she returns to heaven. There's another version where Twaki was entirely human and offended his wife Tingatango, daughter of Waiteri, prompting her to return to the sky. In order to find her, he meets his blind ancestress Mateka Repo, who helps him climb further. The brothers manage to save their mother, and together they trapped Supernatury in their house and blocked off all potential forces of light or escape. Their mother explained that sunlight could kill Supernatury, so the three tricked Supernatury into believing it was still night. And then suddenly lit the building on fire and tore the door off 20 for only Torpanature survived Tonga Hidiankini. A son named Eglahiro was born to Twaki and Hinaperapiri, so named because after an attack on Twaki, Hinaperapiri warmed him by the fire with firewood. Alternatively, Twaki's people were too lazy to collect firewood for their village, so Twaki collected it himself and threw it to the ground, startling the people. Wahiro would marry Matoka Rao Tweri, who when pregnant had a craving for chewy flesh, and so asked her Wahiro to kill chewy for her to eat. In journeying through the forest, Wahiro is captured and killed by Theogrema Tapu Tingatango. Life of Rata. Rata, the son of Wahiro and Hinaperapiri, set out to avenge his father's death. How he killed Matoka Rao Tweri is dependent on where the tale is told, but he won in the end and used the ogre's bones to make spears. He soon found out, though, that Wahiro's bones were lying with Twaki's old enemies, Supernatury. In order to get to Supernatury, Rata had to build a canoe. Rata set about chopping down the tree for his canoe, cutting the top away, and went home after the day's work was over. The next day, he found the tree standing upright as if it had never been touched. He repeated the task of chopping it, and the next day, it was again re-erected. He decided to hide in a nearby bush for the night to understand what was happening, and discovered that his work was being undone by the Birdlakikatari spirits, who explained that he didn't perform the correct rituals and thus his attempts to sell the tree were an insult to Tain Mahuta. With expressing regret, Tehakachuri constructed his canoe for him. While rescuing Wahiro's bones, Rata overheard Supernaturizing a song Kalatitikara while banging the bones together. He killed the priests and later used the song to turn the tides of all losing battle against them. In a flash, the dead of Rata's people returned to life and slaughtered Supernatury in their thousands. Rata's sons by Tona Rautweri were Toakara and Wakata. In other accounts, their parents were Tearaharu and Apakura 12, 15 in other accounts still. Apikura's Toakara's wife threw an apron or girdle into the ocean, which a deity named Rongatakui turned into Wakatau. The boy was taught a handful of magical secrets by the deity, and he was capable of living under the sea 25 as Wakatau's brother. Toakararo had been murdered by the Akihapai or Rairoa tribe, so the former avenged him by gathering an army and slaughtering the ascending tribe. This is one event that was said to trigger migrations from Hawaii. Traditions. Every Maori social group had its own body of traditional beliefs, which validated its claims to the territory it occupied, gave authority to those of high rank, and justified the group's external relationships with other groups. These purposes were served because the members of the groups concerned believed that the traditions were true records of past events, and they acted accordingly. Alliances between groups were facilitated if it was believed that they shared a common heritage, and the commoner's respect for and fear of his chief were based, in part at least, on his beliefs in the semi-divine ancestry of those of high rank. Bruce Grandison Beats Maori Myths and Traditions 1966-26, 450 traditions, as opposed to myth. Tell of incidents which are for the most part humanly possible. Genealogical links with the present place them within the past millennium. They are geographically located in New Zealand and knowledge of them is confined to this country. Bruce Grandison Biggs Maori Myths and Traditions 1966 free. Discovery or origin traditions the South Island's earliest Waita. Trace.
Okay, I'm stopping it. Would it be 19? Novo.
International Center for Law and Religion Studies 29th Annual International Law and Religion Symposium. Peace building is broader than just ending conflicts, it also includes building a just society that will be able to remain at peace. What role can religion and religious organizations play in establishing this lasting peace and justice throughout the world? To what extent have religiously motivated individuals and groups help build peace in our communities? What remains to be done? Scholars, government and intergovernmental leaders, civil society activists, and religious leadership address these questions on a global and national level at this year's annual International Law and Religion Symposium. Religion's Roles in Peacebuilding October 24, 2022 International Center for Law and Religion Studies. J. Reuben Clark Law School, Brigham Young University, Provo, Utah, USA. Select recordings will be available on our blog, Talk About Law and Religion, soon. Conference schedule Funday, October 2nd, 7-8:15 p.m. Opening session room 303 Moderator Elizabeth A. Clark, Associate Director, International Center for Law and Religion Studies, J. Reuben Clark Law School, Brigham Young University and Program Chair, International Law and Religion Symposium, United States welcomes. Kevin J. Werson, President, Brigham Young University, United States. Brett G. Favre, Director, International Center for Law and Religion Studies. And Rex E. Lee, Chair and Professor of Law, J. Reuben Clark Law School, Brigham Young University, United States. Keynotes. Daniel Silpot, Professor of Political Science, University of Notre Dame, United States. Nuri Turkle, Senior Fellow, Hudson Institute, Chair, U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, United States from 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. Reception. Fritz B. Burns Memorial Lounge, 2nd floor J. Reuben Clark Law Building Monday, October 3rd 9:10:30 am First Plenary Session. Understanding Religion and Peace Building Room 303 Moderator, Amy Lynn Andrus, Associate Director, International Center for Law and Religion Studies, J. Reuben Clark Law School, Brigham Young University, United States. Speakers, Fiona Bruce, Member of Parliament, Prime Minister's Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion or Beliefs. Pre-recorded message, United Kingdom. Carlos Bernal Pulido, Professor, University of Dayton School of Law, Judge, Inter-American Human Rights Commission, Columbia. James Christie, Ambassador at Large, Canadian Maltese Federation, Canada. Baroness Emma Nicholson, Amar International Charitable Foundation. United Kingdom. Mervyn Thomas, Chair, UK Forb Forum, Founder President, Christian Solidarity Worldwide, United Kingdom from 10:30 to 10:45 am break. From 10:45 to 11:45 am breakout sessions Azerbaijan and Ukraine Room 303 Moderator, Edward Rowe, President and CEO, the Sterling Foundation. Speakers. Ravan Hashanov, Executive Director, Baku International Multiculturalism Center, Azerbaijan. Maxim Vashin, Executive Director, Institute for Religious Freedom, Ukraine. Anna Maria Basaris Yuzina, Board Member. Workshop for the Academic Study of Religions, Ukraine, Malaysia, Philippines and South Korea. Room 314 Moderator. Professor Juno Bate, Assistant Professor in the Department of Asian and Near Eastern Languages, Brigham Young University. Speakers. Chae Young Kim, Faculty of Religious Studies, Chogang University, South Korea. Thalma Perifal, Program Director. Up National College of Public Administration and Governance, Philippines. Simon Fire, Lawyer, Director of Lawyer Kamek for Change Malaysia. Media Perspectives Room 205 Moderator, Joel Campbell, Associate Teaching Professor of Journalism, Brigham Young University. Panelists. Luis Rosales, Journalist, Grupo America, Argentina. Elsie Fiera, President, Guatemala Media Chamber, Guatemala. Peggy Fletcher, Stack journalist, Fault Lake Tribune, United States, Cape Verde, Mozambique and South Africa, Room 206 moderator. Frederick Williams, Professor of the Department of Spanish and Portuguese, Brigham Young University speakers. Filomena Mendes Goncalves, Minister for the Presidency of the Council of Ministers and Parliamentary Affairs, Cape Verde. Josina da Graca, Deputy National Director of Religious Affairs, Mozambique, Mariloke, Abram Falamolaka, Chief of Staff. Department of Social Development Ministry, South Africa, 12 noon 1:30 p.m. lunch for conference delegates and invited guests. Wilkinson Student Centre, room 30 to 20 to 30 to 24 from 1:30 to 10 p.m. Group photo for delegates from 2:15 to 3:45 p.m. Second plenary session. Peacemaking, Religion and Diplomacy, room 303 moderator, Brett G. Fargs, Director, International Centre for Law and Religion Studies, and Rex C. Lee Chair and Professor of Law, J. Reuben Clark Law School, Brigham Young University, United States panelists. Jan Seigel, former European Union FORG Special Envoy, member of the Earth Summit Global Leadership Council, member of the EarthBA International Council of Experts. Slovak Republic Ismet Jan, Ambassador to the European Union, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Bangladesh. Yafuid Nakayama, former State Minister of Defense, former State Minister of Foreign Affairs, Special Advisor to the Chairperson of the Research Council for Foreign Affairs, Defense, and Game-Changing Fields, Alfonso Jose Quinones Limas, Ambassador of the Republic of Guatemala to the United States, Guatemala. From 3:45 to 4 o'clock p.m. break, from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock p.m. breakout sessions, Canada and the United Kingdom, room 303 moderator. James Phillips, Assistant Professor of Law, Chapman University, Fowler School of Law speakers. Andrew Meston, Chief of Staff, Amar International Charitable Foundation, United Kingdom. Farah Raza, Stipendiary Lecturer in Public Law, Pembroke College, University of Oxford, United Kingdom. Derek Ross, Executive Director and General Counsel, Christian Legal Fellowship, Canada. Jonathan Tucker, recent graduate, Blackfriars Hall, University of Oxford, United Kingdom, Brazil, Dominican Republic and Honduras, room 306 moderator. Fabio Nascimento, Dodham student, J. Reuben Clark Law School, Brigham Young University, member of the National Association of Data Privacy Professionals. Speakers, Rodrigo Vitorino Sujarales, Professor, Brazilian Center of Studies in Law and Religion, Central University of Uberlândia, Brazil. Angel Salvador Cano Senchen, Partner and Consultant, Rodriguez Estrella. Cano Amatov, Deacon and Legal Advisor to the Dominican Conference of Catholic Bishops, Dominican Republic. Javier Saldana Ferrano, Professor of Law, Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico. Mauricio Vileda, Congressman, Honduras. Cambodia and Mongolia, room 314 moderator, Elizabeth A. Clark, Associate Director, International Center for Law and Religion Studies, J. Reuben Clark Law School, Brigham Young University and Program Chair, International Law and Religion Symposium, United States speakers. Abonkru Mung Fakan, Professor of Law, National University of Mongolia. H. Sasik Frey, Deputy Governor of Kampong Cham, Cambodia. Chile, Guatemala, Mexico and Panama, room 205 moderator, Jose Antonio Calvi, Legal Counsel, Peruvian Conference of Catholic Bishops, former President. Latin American Consortium for Religious Liberty, Peru speakers Nelly Cedeno de Paredes, Magistrate, Superior Family Court, Panama. Omar Cortez Gaibar, Director of the National Office of Religious Affairs, Chile. Robin Garcia, Pastor, Presidential Commissioner for Religious Freedom of Guatemala. Felipe Gaetan Alcala, Professor Investigador de Universidad La Fal, Mexico. Afia room 206 moderator. David H. Moore, Sterling and Eleanor Colton Endowed Chair in Law and Religion, Associate Director, International Center for Law and Religion Studies, J. Reuben Clark Law School, Brigham Young University speakers, Oakatinashu Adam, Chief, Ministry of Peace. Muhammad Dijanashan, Professor, College of Law and Governance Studies, Addis Ababa University. Tuesday, October 4, 9:10:15 a.m. Third plenary session. Religion and interfaith engagement in times of International Center for Law and Religion Studies, Edward Rowe. International Center for Law and Religion Studies Edward Rowe. Mr. Rowe is a founding member of the board, president, and CEO for the Sterling Foundation. He was previously a partner at law firms in Washington, D.C., where he focused on international dispute resolution and peace building, foreign investment, and government relations. He has spent much of his career working among developing nations and has represented foreign governments before international tribunals, the UN Security Council, EUAS, and other international organizations. Mr. Rowe has also served on boards in the private and non-profit sectors and advised international non-profit organizations on humanitarian and development programs. He has a bachelor's degree from Brigham Young University, a master's degree from the University of Chicago, Harris School of Public Policy, and Doctor of Jurisprudence from the University of Chicago Law School. He and his wife, Brooke, are the parents of 6 children. Kosovo, Special War Court delivers first convictions for guerrillas Balkan Insight. As 2022 came to an end, the Kosovo Specialist Chambers in The Hague finally handed down its first war crimes verdict, convicting former Kosovo Liberation Army unit commander Fali Mustafa and sentencing him to 26 years in prison. The court found that Mustafa, who used the wartime nom de guerre Commander Kali, personally participated in the torture of two prisoners at Ikla compound in 1999 and that his failure to order the release of one prisoner directly led to their death. Acting Specialist Prosecutor Alex Whiting described the conviction as a victory for justice and, in particular, for the victims of Fali Mustafa and their families, all Kosovar Albanians, whose personal tragedies have been at the heart of this case and who have suffered more than 2 decades on account of Mr. Mustafa's actions. But in Kosovo, representatives of victims of war crimes committed by Serbian forces during the 1998-99 conflict disagree. The ingod war crimes Jakova 98-99 calling the verdict unjust, biased and selective. Many Stop using salami tactics, China tells us RT World News. Washington must drop its old trick of unilateral bullying that it hands out to Beijing. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has told us Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The two top diplomats had a phone call at Washington's request. Beijing said in a statement, "It must be pointed out that the United States should not pursue dialogue and cooperation while containing and stabbing China in." The Backwang told Blinken, according to the readout of the call circulated by the Chinese Foreign Ministry in effect. "It is still the old trick of unilateral bullying. It has not worked with China in the past, nor will it work in the future." Wang added that Washington must take seriously China's legitimate concerns, stop containing and suppressing China's development, and particularly stop using salami tactics to constantly challenge China's red line, referring to the negotiation practice of repeatedly securing small, incremental concessions. Washington and Beijing should build on the common understandings reached by the US and Chinese presidents during their recent meeting. In Indonesia, Wang stressed the zero-sum mentality will only lead the two major countries to mutual attrition and head-on collision. And it cannot be more obvious who is in the right and who is in the wrong, he stated. According to the Chinese side, Blinken reiterated Washington's respect towards the One China policy and said it does not support Taiwan's independence. The two sides also exchanged views on the Ukraine issue. Wang Yi stressed that China always stands for peace, the ministry added. The US Department of State released a tight-lipped readout of the talks as well, stating only that Blinken had discussed the need to maintain open lines of communication and responsibly manage the bilateral relationship. The US also said its top diplomat raised concerns about Russia's war against Ukraine and the threats it poses to global security and economic stability during the phone call. Over the past few years, China-US relations have been plagued by multiple issues, with the Taiwan problem remaining the main one. While formally following the One China policy and recognizing Beijing's sovereignty over the island, Washington has been actively cooperating with Taipei. Visits of senior US officials to Taiwan, as well as booming military cooperation between Taipei and Washington, have repeatedly raised objections from Beijing, which sees such activities as meddling in its internal affairs. Taiwan has been de facto independent since 1949, when the losing side in the Chinese Civil War relocated to the island and established its own administration there. China considers the island an inalienable part of its territory. Where spies push Twitter to censor anti-Ukraine narratives, media RT World News. The Pentagon, CIA and other US intelligence and law enforcement agencies became increasingly more aggressive with takedown requests. The latest trove of Twitter files has revealed. The documents suggest the agencies were effectively pushing the platform to censor foreign policy stories that ran against the Washington-approved narrative. The files show the FBI acting as doorman to a vast program of social media surveillance and censorship, encompassing agencies across the federal government, from the State Department to the Pentagon to the CIA. Journalist Matt Taibbi wrote in the Christmas Eve edition of the Twitter files, released with the blessing of the social media platform's owner, Elon Musk. Thousands of censorship requests flowed to Twitter from what were termed ogre in the documents, or other government organizations, through the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force. Twitter executives often struggled to validate government claims, but were under constant pressure to find evidence to blame any foreign actor. Russia in particular found no links to Russia, an unnamed analyst said in one of the emails, later suggesting he could brainstorm to find a stronger connection. Former Trust and Safety Chief Yoel Ross admitted in another instance that he'd found no real matches using the INSO internal communications, so that Twitter had been getting so many requests that its executives had to improvise a system for prioritizing them. The SEDS had dedicated personnel tasked with tailoring takedown requests to Twitter's policies for faster processing, which the execs acknowledged as odd, but even then the company often struggled to justify censorship. Many people wonder if internet platforms receive direction from intelligence agencies about moderation of foreign policy news stories. It appears Twitter did, in some cases by way of the Fitz Flash. FBI Taibbi wrote. At least some of these directives originated at the CIA. According to former agent and whistleblower John Kiriakou, who said he recognized the formatting, the said sometimes sent massive batches of over 1,000 accounts lined up for digital execution with only a brief explanation of the alleged problems. On multiple occasions they accused Russian agents of directing accounts that highlighted predominantly anti-Ukraine narratives or documented purported rights abuses committed by Ukrainians. 51. Intel about the shady origin of these accounts might be true. But so might at least some of the information in them about neo-Nazis, rights abuses in Donbas, even about our own government. Should we block such material? Matt Taibbi at Taibbi December 24, 2020 to another intelligence assessment sent to Twitter claimed that accounts spreading information about neo-Nazis in Ukraine were part of a Kremlin-controlled propaganda campaign and must be banned. 47. One Intel report lists accounts tied to Ukraine neo-Nazi propaganda. This includes assertions that Joe Biden helped orchestrate a coup in 2014 and put his fun on the board of Burisma. pic.twitter.com/bitch9 Sikamat Taibbi at Taibbi December 24, 2022. In what Taibbi called a damning admission, an unnamed former Twitter executive once noted that the government partners were getting increasingly aggressive with their takedown requests. Due to a lack of technical evidence on our end, I've generally left it be, waiting for more evidence, he said about the Insobrix account. He further argued that since BRICS is an inherently Russia-dominated economic organization, it was always likely directed by the Kremlin. Our window on that is closing, given that government partners are becoming more aggressive on attribution and reporting on it. I'm going to go ahead with suspension and marking the domain unsafe. Spearheaded by Taibbi in cooperation with fellow reporters Barry White, Lee Sang and others. The Twitter files have fed light on several controversial decisions made by the company, including material surrounding the suspension of ex-President Donald Trump, the practice of shadow banning, as well as a site-wide ban on a New York Post report about the foreign business dealings of Hunter Biden, the son of President Joe Biden. The files also explain how the US intelligence community worked hand-in-glove with the platform to flag speech for suspension that the US government deemed misinformation, and show how CESB and Twitter locked horns over the agency's claims of increased activity by propaganda bots, of which Twitter said it found no evidence. China hails rock-solid relations with Russia and former Soviet Union. The ties between Beijing and Moscow are immune to changes in the international environment, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has said. Relations between China and Russia are rock-solid, and all external attempts to sow discord between the neighbors are going to be in vain, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said on Sunday. The strategic partnership between Beijing and Moscow has become even more mature and resilient over the past year, Wang stated during his address at the Symposium on the International Situation and China's Foreign Relations. China and Russia have firmly supported each other in upholding respective core interests during the period, he added. The US has failed to persuade China to join international sanctions against Russia over the conflict in Ukraine. Beijing has called for peace, but stopped short of condemning Moscow for launching its military operation and blamed the crisis on the actions of the West, including NATO's eastward expansion. According to the foreign minister, bilateral trade between China and Russia is approaching a $200 billion target at a faster pace. The scale of business done between the two neighbors in national currencies has also been expanding. Significant progress has also been achieved in cross-border connectivity, with the opening of new road and railway bridges in 2022. In an apparent jab at Washington, he said that as some country is seeking to revive the Cold War mentality and fabricating the false narrative of democracy versus authoritarianism, China and Russia have stood in solidarity with other countries to steadfastly push for multipolarity and greater democracy in international relations. The relationship between Beijing and Moscow is based on non-alliance, non-confrontation and non-targeting of any third party. remains rock solid, Wang insisted. It remains free from interference or any attempt to show discord between the two countries, and is immune from changes in the international environment, he added. The minister also addressed the ties between China and the US, pointing out that they were plunged into serious difficulties because of America's decision to see China as its primary competitor and engage in blatant blockade, suppression and provocation against China. Such a situation is harmful for both sides, whose economies are interconnected, Wang said. He further called upon the US to change course and start working towards healthy and stable cooperation.
Guess what, amigo? I think I'm going to head off. Okay, I have to go somehow. Adios, amigos. Hope they talk the good shit, eh? How do you, come on up. What do you do? God, what happened? How God, man, God, Hector. What happened, amigo? Is it God? Here, press this button and intermix actor. Goodbye. YouTube, subscribe, share, like.